foremost, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Jackson. I'm the head of partnerships, alliances, and new business here at Pipplet. Pipplet, if you don't know, and today you will find out more about us, is a premier language assessment tool for recruitment and talent management. We've been around for a while, since 2015, and we are a subsidiary of ETS, makers of the renowned TOEIC, TOEFL, and GRE tests. So basically, we are used via recruiters to assess and screen the right candidates based on language fluency in over 40 languages. Our test is one of the best you've ever seen. If you haven't tried it, please do. It's all online, very secure against cheating, and it only takes 30 minutes. And you get results within 24 hours or within about 10 minutes if you choose our AI option. So we are integrated also with leading ATS and HR software. So if you do have a busy tech stack and you have a lot of tools that you're already using, don't worry, we generally can squeeze in one of those and make the use of our service very, very seamless. We serve over 1,600 organizations worldwide. We help them to develop talent, multilingual talent, confidently, accurately, and with great efficiency. And many of those employees are in the consulting sector, bringing in very shortly Anastasija, where it's more important than ever to hire candidates fluent in more than one languages. This is why I am so excited to have one of our dear clients with us today. And Anastasija, I hope, will give us some perspective on how the growing demand for multilingual talent in the sector is growing and how they're tackling it in their recruitment strategy. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our guest speaker for this webinar, Anastasija Siljanoska. I hope I said that right.
I did practice last week.
Oh, yes, I'm pleased. I did practice it last week, but it nearly caught me off guard. She is actually the Europe Talent Acquisition Lead within GEP, has a huge amount of experience, 10 years of experience in talent acquisition. Anastasija has spent most of her recruitment career hiring multilingual talent, so best person to be on this call and speak with us today. And she focuses on developing strategic recruitment initiatives to enable GEP's growth in Europe by finding the right skills, by skyrocketing GEP client success. Fluent in 4 languages, which is very embarrassing for me living in Spain. I speak 1.5 language, if you get the joke. Anastasija brings expertise in navigating these complexities of international multilingual recruitment with these 4 languages by offering building and tailored candidate experience that meet the needs of today's language talent landscape. So welcome, Anastasija. If you want to give a little bit more information about yourself and maybe the languages that you speak, that would be awesome.
So first of all, Mike, thank you so much for the lovely introduction and welcome to everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here on this joint webinar with Pipplet. I'm not going to go into anything Mike already mentioned. I'm myself currently based in Prague, so hello from Prague to everyone. I think I saw a few people from the Czech Republic in the chat. And yeah, I actually don't have anything more to add in terms of introduction, except for the fact that, talent acquisition is something that I have been dabbling in, if I may say so, for the last, as Mike mentioned, almost 10 years. Still very passionate about it, and I actually find it an incredibly interesting topic to discuss, not just specifically from the perspective of acquisition of talent, but also, working in recruitment means that usually recruiters discover in practice certain trends much earlier than the rest of the organization. So for me, recruitment is a little bit of a litmus paper in terms of what's happening out there on the market. And that's why I actually think it's incredibly interesting to deep dive into some of these topics that we have today on the webinar. So very excited, a little bit nervous, which is shocking for me. Working in recruitment, you don't usually get nervous, but we'll pull through, hopefully. So thank you.
We will, and welcome. Really, really excited to have you here. Do you want to give everybody a quick word on what GEP does for those that might not know you?
Absolutely. So we are a niche procurement and supply chain organization focusing on only that area of procurement and supply chain, and we approach it through 2 different offerings, one of which is our software, which if you go on our website, that's the first thing that you see. It's an AI-powered next generation platform that really, really can skyrocket absolutely the way that an organization manages their digital procurement and supply chain. And on top of that, we are also the second offering is services. We roughly divide it into, let's say, more kind of consulting and managed services type of business. But for the most part, it basically means we have procurement and supply chain professionals that are able to advise clients on different ways of how to navigate the most recent, I would say, supply chain disruptions, but also how to, generally speaking, optimize the procurement space. The reason I'm saying is niche is because procurement is not necessarily perceived as a very strategic function in many organizations. And we beg to differ in that. And we really want to show that it can actually be, and it is a very strategic function. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with our clients. At the core of everything that we do globally is language skills. So no matter where people are based in GEP, I would say we rarely hire people that only speak one language. At the very least, everybody speaks English. So
Nice.
by default, as I said, we are a multilingual, multicultural organization, not just in terms of an organization, but also in terms of the services that we provide. So that's us.
Wonderful. And I agree with what you've just said. And thanks for that. I think this is the perfect segue into my first question that I had for today. GP is a large global player in the consulting space as well. So you're at the heart of industry-wide shifts and changes. And because of that, how do you see the demand for multilingual and global teams evolving in the consulting industry, particularly with the rise of remote work and global expansion?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the first thing to say here is that I think we all need to kind of acknowledge what has happened in the last 4 years, or let's say just acknowledge the fact that we are living in a post-pandemic world and that has tremendously impacted the workforce and kind of the talent landscape globally. So I think a lot of the trends that I will be talking about today and that we are going to touch upon, I think it's just fair to say that a lot of them are kind of generally applicable across the board, and they're not necessarily just tied to that multilingual space, even
Yeah.
though there are a few, I think, kind of pointers or a few differences, a few specifics in this area that's worth covering. But in general, I mean, the demand is increasing. The demand for talent is increasing. It will keep increasing, um, while in the same time, obviously, kind of not just the demand for numbers, but also the demand for certain skills and quality. And I think if I have any talent acquisition professionals in the chat, feel free to drop your concerns or at least give me a thumbs up. I think you'll all agree that it's a very challenging landscape that we're navigating. So the demand is increasing as in terms of numbers, in terms of skill set, specifically also in that kind of language space. The let's say the rise of remote work and kind of the globalization of the workforce has brought certain benefits. And I think that companies should definitely consider how they can use these. The benefits are that the supply has increased, right? If
Yeah.
previously, companies were rather focused on local recruitment, relying on local talent, currently with some of the changing trends, with the way that things operate, companies are able to consider a larger, let's say, portion of talent. A very specific example that we also use in GEPs, previously or pre-COVID, pre-pandemic times, I think many administrations and governments, specifically in Europe, are very difficult and very admin heavy in terms of legislative processes,
Mhm.
administration, paperwork, etc. Post pandemic, a lot of governments have really kind of spearheaded their digitalization, which means that a lot of actual processes have shortened. And that has, for example, directly impacted how long it takes to get a visa for, let's say, a non-European national to relocate to Europe. And
True.
that is a dramatic help for, companies hiring multilingual talent, because if they can wait shorter to maybe relocate someone with a specific skill to Europe, then that definitely helps. So the supply has increased somewhat. I don't think it's a dramatic increase, but what has also increased is competition. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to sooner or later catch up on kind of the trends and what's happening and figure certain things out. So I think still navigating this landscape is going to present with certain challenges. And then how to address them, I think it's going to be actually an interesting question because, I think it all kind of goes back to certain basics in terms of attraction, retention, culture, and so on and so forth. But I would say that's kind of the main um, trends that we're seeing in terms of the increase of the demand, the increase of the supply, but also increase of the general sense of competitiveness.
Amazing. And you've mentioned the challenges that, building and managing these multilingual teams come with within consulting services and adapting to this global demand. What are the typical obstacles that your organizations face, and how are you overcoming them?
Yeah. So I think obviously as I said, the supplies increase, but also there's more competition. So, and certainly certain trends that have changed, as I said, in the kind of post-pandemic era, people generally have very high expectations of their employers. I think everybody sitting here on the call, even let's be real, even me myself, I hold my employer in high regards, but I have high expectations as well. And those expectations are very often things that are not necessarily kind of related to any major things, but they're really more about how does my employer build a culture? How good I feel in this organization? Can I work with integrity? How does an organization uphold its core values? Do I believe in what this company is doing? So we've moved past, I would say, the certain sense of kind of, I would call it the basic layer of Maslow's pyramid, which obviously is always going to be important, but we're moving kind of past that into more of what is the culture and what actually as a human being I'm kind of getting out of my employer. And that's,
Yeah.
I think those are the needs of the talent and the workforce that employers should be thinking about. And
Yeah.
every organization will have challenges with this, right? Again, we have our own challenges even within GEP. And I would say putting into kind of putting in context the multilingual sphere, that simply means that very often we have a very diverse workforce. And again, for those of you that are based in Europe, you know that even though we are not a big continent, I think the cultural differences here are quite big between different countries and cultures. So finding a certain way to meet these kind of this diversity of culture is challenging. And also beyond just the element of language and culture, we also have to consider the generational differences, where we're in a very unique situation to have four different generations operating in the same workplace. And a lot of organizations will find this very challenging. And I mean, again, the obstacles are definitely kind of more specifically attraction, retention, but it is, to use a metaphor here, at the core of it is what language does your organization speak
Yeah.
to their people? And when I mean language, it's what is the culture, right? How do you create value for your employees? Because again, competition is there. If they're not happy with what they have in your organization, it's very easy to go to someone else. So I think to kind of deal with these challenges, which and they're becoming complex again, because we're kind of expanding the workforce, but we're also narrowing it down when we're looking at multilingual talent. Competition is high, but I think the kind of the basic thing is just go back to the basics. What is your employee experience like? Are people annoyed with how they feel interacting with the organization? What is the way in which the organization communicates things to the workforce, right? So, how transparent are you with people? Are you creating a safe environment for them where they can feel included, where they can feel that raising a concern will not be retaliated against? Um,
Love
do
that.
they feel a purpose? Is there a sense of purpose in your organization? And I know if I think about GP, I'm like, oh, yes, we do all of these, but do we, right? Can we do better? And we should be actually thinking, I feel, more of these elements as opposed to really considering robust strategies on how to, attract talent in a super brilliant way or like retain them in a super brilliant way. No, it's really basics. We're all humans.
Yeah.
And there is a certain code of how humans communicate. And we just expect, I guess, that our organizations, no matter how big or small or large they are, that they become more human. they actually start thinking from the perspective of how does a human interaction look like, and not
Yep.
think of it, I'm an organization, but actually perceive it that even though I'm an organization, a system, a mechanism, I need to find a way to communicate to my employee as a human. And then how you do it through technology or whatever, it doesn't matter. People accept these things these days. It's more about do I cater to their candidate experience or their employee experience down the line, and that's eventually how we actually impact our clients' experience as well.
Nice. And you've touched on a lot of good points about culture, about diversity, about catering to the needs of really diverse set of people. And I've been on your website and I've had to look at some of your recruitment processes. And I think GP myself has a reputation for its innovative approach for talent acquisition. Um, Share with me a little bit about your approach for the recruitment and onboarding of multilingual and diverse
Yeah,
candidates to align with these values and
yeah.
goals that you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing to say is that obviously we are, when we look at multilingual talent, so by default, that means that we are actually open to relocating people across Europe. So
Perfect.
mobility is key. I think that if your company does not have any sort of relocation policy, you're missing out, right? So there needs to be a best practice of relocating people, thinking through that process, what they need, how to position that package in a way that's friendly and that is also obviously cost beneficial for your organization. Think about the type of people that you're recruiting. Is it mostly juniors? Is it experienced professionals? And what support they need through that relocation? Obviously, it's also easier, I think, to relocate juniors, and that's something that, for obvious reasons. So, find, I guess, ways in which you can complement your local source of talent with an external inflow. And again, if the organization is not doing this or avoiding this for any reason, they are losing talent. It's as simple as that. So that's number one. You have to, as an organization, be open and ready to um, relocate people. Our relocation package, for example, consists of, or kind of that whole process of relocation, it involves covering the travel. So one-way ticket to whatever location the person is traveling to. We also offer 2 weeks of accommodation paid by GEP, and we also give them kind of a relocation bonus. We
Oh,
also
nice.
provide them with a buddy, which is someone that can help them with any adaptation throughout their kind of move. And sometimes we connect that buddy with that person even before they join the organization. And they also get a lot of information about whatever location they're relocating to, specifics. So we have like relocation booklets, which are exhaustive and contain a lot of information on how to adapt to that culture. And also, after the person joins, we make sure that we match them with a good mentor that can really help them with that adjustment process. So that's kind of one, I would say, aspect that we do in terms of attraction. Now, in terms of overall recruitment, I think because we hire multilingual talent, and as discussed, that talent is scarce, we actually are quite, and I'm going to use the word aggressive because I think it does reflect the way that we operate. We have a really kind of aggressive sourcing practices. We don't wait for people to apply. Almost ever, we by default know that we have to go out and get them. So that's
Yeah.
another thing. If the organization does not, for whatever reason, in this day and age, source people and kind of engage with passive talents, once again, you're missing out on a huge portion of people that would be curious enough, at least, to have a discussion with your organization. And those multiple discussions that you may have without any result, that's really something that is your return of investment down the line. That's how you build a brand. That's how you kind of, even spending 10 minutes with someone that you know you might not kind of hire in the end is extremely beneficial for the brand of the company. And another thing that we make sure to do is, um, and this is going to be difficult for many organizations. I'm aware that what I'm going to say now may not apply for everyone, but you really need to start building those connections with your candidates very early on, meaning from day one as a recruiter. You have to customize and personalize that experience for them. The moment you approach recruitment as kind of a tick box exercise, meaning, okay, I'm screening based on a script, I'm interviewing based on a script. Um, Candidates feel that, right? Especially if you target people with niche skills such as languages. They know what a good recruitment process looks like. They know what a good recruiter is.
Yeah.
and they can tell, and they give us that feedback along the line. I don't want to brag, but I will brag because I'm actually very proud of it, and I think we receive exceptional feedbacks from our candidates saying very often that, oh my God, you're the best recruiter I've ever spoken with. Even though I'm not going to proceed with this position, I want you to know that this has been an incredible experience for me.
That's good.
And that's what companies need to think about.
Yep.
People need to have that wow effect from that interaction with you, because that's what's convincing them that if a recruiter is doing this job with me, they have more confidence that joining down the line in the organization will also reflect that high standard. So it's incredibly important to focus on the candidate, their experience, that interaction with them, and approach it with integrity, approach it with transparency, meaning sharing what are the good and the bad about the role, about the organization, setting the right expectation. And that leads me to my last point that I'll mention here, because I can talk about this forever, but setting the right expectation, really assessing if who you're recruiting for is who you need, right? So for example, we often have cases where we have positions where, let's say we're looking for German speakers. So we
Yep.
hire a German speaker, they join the team, and then we hear, I'm barely using my German.
Uh-huh.
That is a big no-no.
Yeah.
That is a big no-no. And that's not the candidate's fault, it's the organization's fault, right? And
Yeah.
again, multilingual talent, the reason that we put them in a separate bracket is because they want to use their language. And very often they don't come from a business background, right? They come from linguistics background, which in turn means you have to develop them in other areas. But if you do not meet that key criteria of having them use their language, and you want to have the language just in case, it's the wrong approach, and it is likely you will lose people. So you have to be transparent with the candidate, if to what degree the language is used, what does the position entail, and then vice versa, be transparent with your business stakeholders and say, this is the expectation of this
Yep.
candidate. If we cannot meet it, we might as well go for someone else. So that's just bits and pieces. I'm going to probably stop here because, as I said, I think I can talk for a very long time. But if the chat has any questions specific to this, I'm more than happy to dive a little bit deeper into it.
But you're right in regards to language. Some people spend a long time and they're very proud of showing off their language that they spent so many months learning and studying and practicing. So these multilingual environments have to be embraced, not always just speaking English, but allowing people
Yeah,
to communicate in other languages as well. Um, you know,
absolutely.
I'm not ashamed to say that I don't speak Spanish very well, but I'm trying. And certainly, I have to say, when I'm out having dinner, I will try in a more relaxed environment with friends to speak a little bit more Spanish. I don't know if anybody that knows me is on the call knows I don't speak it very well, but when I can finally connect in Spanish. And I told my first joke in Spanish about 2 weeks ago, and somebody turned around and went,
Good job.
"Oh." Yeah, and there was like, oh, so now you're funny in Spanish as well as English, which was also a compliment because it confirmed that I was funny in English. So I was like, yes, I did it. I did it. So being able to use your language and show it off a little bit and have fun with it as well. I mean, obviously in a professional setting with clients, it's got to be at a certain standard, which is where, assessments and tests come in. But it is important that you allow them to use language. And on this topic, because obviously languages is something that I love to talk about being here at Pipplet, we know that research shows teams with this mix of language and culture, which is what you've touched on, are more innovative and they're better at solving complex problems. What do you think GEP has observed in hiring a multilingual workforce in terms of productivity, innovation, client satisfaction, and around that topic?
Yeah. So first of all, this is an observation that I had from previous company, and I've heard it from some of my other colleagues. I haven't heard it in GP because we just have not had that case, at least not in Europe specifically. But um, we've had, or I've experienced cases where when you had very local teams, they
Yeah.
had lower retention and much more, I wouldn't say lower innovation levels. I mean, that's hard to judge and assess, but definitely the retention was lower. So there was more attrition in, let's say, more homogenous teams. Now, may not be the case, but this is an observation. Whereas multilingual teams are teams where you have people that bring different perspectives, because
Yeah.
again, that's what a language means. It is a different perspective. It's a different way of viewing the world. And again, I studied linguistics, so we had some pretty interesting classes about how language can change and or influence personality, and why different people use different that are trilingual or whatever, they use different languages in different situations to express different things. But by default, when you hire a team of multilingual people, but even if, let's say, kind of same nationality speaking different languages people, you have a more innovative environment because there is a difference of thought and perspective. And I
Yeah.
think that's where innovation starts. It starts with diversity. And when we say diversity, it's not just in terms of, basic DI criteria, but it starts with diversity and of opinion and diversity of thought. And if as an organization you don't create that environment for people to agree to disagree, basically, it is very difficult to build any other kind of diversity at all.
Yeah.
And
I
again,
agree.
diversity and innovation are directly connected, right? If everybody thinks the same, nobody has that out of the box idea, then where does innovation happen? How is it validated or triggered? Basically, it's not validated. Innovation is usually triggered. So definitely, again, having multilingual professionals in your team helps with that, because again, even if their nationality is the same, usually when people study a language in a lot of depth, they don't just study the language, right? Most language education majors are focused on culture, they're focused on history. A lot of these people, they travel to that country, let's say, to spend their 6 months or 12 months to mingle with the culture. So there's certain elements that this diversity of languages brings in terms of diversity of thought. And as I said,
Yeah.
that directly propels innovation, because it helps with those triggers of, I don't want to say conflict, but I think conflict is a very positive thing, right?
Yeah,
That
it can be.
moment where you can agree to disagree
Yeah.
and try to find something that kind of brings a win-win type of situation. I think that's amazing. And as being a procurement organization, of course, we do love negotiating, and that's what people are taught. So I think for us it plays well in that aspect as well, because kind of getting to that win-win situation is beneficial and great. And it also helps with working with clients, right? I think,
Of
for
course it does.
example, if you have someone that is I'm going to give the example with French, because we do have quite a bit French clients. But let's say we oftentimes, I would hear two people talking, and one would say, or we get this feedback as recruiters as well, oh, we need to be specific about this certain type of candidate, because working with French clients entails certain specifics. So then, people can interact and understand, okay, so what is the expectation by French clients, right? Or kind of how
Yeah.
to approach them in a way and speak a language that is kind of appropriate for them. And everything, think about every single interaction at work, every single relationship we build, everything is through language.
Yeah.
There's no way of getting around it. So it may not be how you speak the language, but it can be the tone, the formality, the your capability of using certain idiomatic expressions or
Yeah.
not, slang. Like there's so many things to dive into, and that's why I think, a lot of times, even though we speak about multilingual talent, we just in generally need to think about communication overall and kind of how we use language to build connections at work. And that's why, Piplet has been instrumental for us really um, uh, kind of get some sort of validation on those language capabilities and skills, and be able to look beyond just a rating or a level of language.
You broke up a little bit for me. I don't know if it was for everybody else, but I did manage to get it.
Sorry.
No, no, no. It might be my side. It might be my side, but I hope everybody got that. But you touched on obviously Pipplet and language assessment, and this in aligns to what you've said in regards to what are your clients' needs, what are you trying to gain internally. It is a critical component. And these traditional methods, I don't know if they were ones that you had before you joined and started to work with Pipplet, like pen and paper tests. They're not fit for these candidate expectations and they don't work
Absolutely.
in remote settings. How have you ensured that the language assessment strategy is both accurate and reflective of in a real world context
Yeah.
with the roles that they're going to face and the clients that they're going to speak to?
Yeah. This a changer for us. And this is the reason why I was absolutely thrilled to do this webinar just for everyone, is that we have just been delighted with the platform, and it has saved us not only considerable amount of time, because previously we had to organize individual verbal language tests and we had to coordinate. So internal employees were, let's say, spending their time, recruiters were spending their time. So first of all, incredible time savings. Second
Nice.
of all, I think that the way that the test is designed is really to reflect those real life situations. So for once, we actually have the confidence that the person is not just ticking multiple questions and
Yep.
multiple answer questions, and they're trying to figure out, okay, is it ABCD, but we actually have a standard benchmark, and that's the keyword here, a standard assessment and a benchmark on what good looks like and how people do based on that benchmark.
Yep.
And the way that the test is designed with those real life situations where people get, specific business related situations, and they have a lot of freedom to answer, it definitely helps. And this is something that, again, for us, it's been a game changer because we had a regularly before where we would get feedback that oh, this certain candidate that we assessed on a certain level during the recruitment process is just not doing well now. Basically, whatever they claimed or we assessed their language skills to be, they're not there. And that's
Yep.
a problem, right? Because when you commit to a client to, give them a certain team member that has a certain skill set and that person doesn't have it, it's quite bad. And again, we're not talking about Microsoft Excel here. We're talking about a language. And
Yes.
that's not something you can teach from scratch, right? You can improve it, but
Yeah.
not to the degree of having someone be fluent. So Pipplet has been amazing, and we are using it globally now. We have people that are using the platform in their locations in China, in India, in Latin America. So it really also helped us kind of have this one one size fits all practically type of assessment, and it's been great so far.
Amazing. And incorporating this in GPS has been growing. I seen a lot of GP entities all signing up, and I can see the global use
Yeah.
of Piplet, which is great. Um, do you think it's helped you to find the right candidates? Do you think it's helped you to streamline? You've said it saved time and it's helped you get but from a time perspective,
Yeah.
when there's a job advertised these days, I see 136 candidates applying. It's a lot, and you cannot physically get through all of them. So having, some filters, but decent filters where you're choosing the right candidates, is it helped you in that way as well?
Absolutely, it has. So in the sense that, again, it's really helped us identify those kind of gaps, or really it's what can really make a difference between a yes or a no for a
Yeah.
candidate, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the key thing. I would say it doesn't happen to us very often, especially with multilingual talent, that we would have like 130 applicants. I think, as I said, we mostly source. But the way that, so again, if you're a large organization, yes, it can help you filter down. Or like if you have a large pool of candidates, it can help you narrow down kind of that funnel. But
Yeah.
if you rather need to expand your funnel and you actually source, the way it helps you then is that it's just 30 minutes. Your candidate experience is so good that you do not risk losing candidates along the way because they're not engaged, because the test is annoying, because they have to do one round there and then another down round when spoken, or they have to come to the office to do a pen and paper test, like God
Yeah.
forbid, right? So that's kind of how it helps you with really increasing that candidate experience. It's just 30 minutes in online. We've had zero cases of people not being able to access it. We know that Piplet will take care of all the technical difficulties for us, all the challenges in terms of assessment, whatever. So that makes a very big difference with picky
Sure.
candidates that you really need to kind of get through that process.
I'm glad. One of the most unique things I love about our solution is our technical redo and validation process, where our job, I believe it's our job, is to make sure you have a fully completed assessment as much as it can be in an honest way. We have some phenomenal technology around the test to make it secure, and we've just released several new things like browser extension. We're looking at their tracking of how they're using the actual system as well, and we're logging how they're using their actual when they're in the test center, so we're able to pick up suspicious activity. It's just amazing. But you're right, what happens if the internet goes off? What happens if the
Yeah.
microphone stops working? We pick up that for you. You don't need to go and resend the test out. But before the candidates have come to the chat, and they normally do, and they say, help me, I don't know what to do, my microphone went off. We're like, no worries, you've already got a link, go back into it, take the test. We give you a new question, by the way, just to
Yeah.
keep the honesty in it. But this is what it's about. It's you want to get an accurate test, we deliver that for you. And I just love how we started our relationship, and I love the feedback that your candidates have given you, and I love how we've been able to help you through this as well. And just one thing, I'm not too sure if you know about it, but I want to drop it in. It's one of my favorite features of Pipplet. We have an AI test. So some people like this stuff, some people don't. I absolutely love it. And the only reason I love it is because I told you I'm half speaking in Spanish, so I'm very low at the minute, just barely making some jokes. But I took the test the other day, and what our AI test does is not only tell me what I've mastered, so like B1, it shows me my potential. So it's telling me what I've mastered, and then it's showing me a little bit of an extra bar saying this is what you've kind of demonstrated as your potential within your results as well. As a learner, this is the best thing I could ever have, because it inspires me more to learn more the language that I'm trying to learn in. So think that's an amazing one. You need to try one of these tests, Anastasia. I'm going to send you one.
Thank you.
So listen,
Thanks.
it's been absolutely great to see how you're staying ahead of the game and adapting to the challenging needs and client demands and things like this. I'm sure our listeners and I certainly have learned a lot from your insights and experience, especially today and over the last weeks having conversations with you. If there's any questions in the audience, please do let them come in. If there isn't any questions, then, if you want to give some feedback on what you've heard today, this will be fantastic. We'd love to hear it. You will get a copy of this webinar as well. There'll be a post email that'll come for those that have signed in today or signed up for the webinar. So I guess I don't see any questions there, but I don't see the Q&A. So maybe let me have a quick look. No, but I do have one myself, and it's just looking ahead. How do you see technology, such as AI, helping you or impacting language assessment and your hiring practice in the next few years?
So, first of all, well, again, I think it is inevitable to at some point just invest into some sort of technology tool um, for this. And again, especially if you're a larger organization, it's likely that you have something, then it's more about figuring out how you can make it more candidate friendly. And I think AI is, again,
Candidate
it's here
friendly.
to help. It's here to help. I think we still do not really know how things will necessarily develop in the future, but I would encourage, I guess, everyone to just think of ways that AI can help, in the sense that there's a lot of things that we do today that do not add any value, even within candidate experience. I'm pretty certain if we kind of just think of that and think of that perspective, okay, how do candidates think, feel, whatever it is, there's certainly certain things that we could do better there without having to do them ourselves. So if that is applicable, then why not kind of considering this for overall language assessment and evaluation? I mean, I think as much as we say that language is very fluid and flexible, it still is a system, right? Again, my linguistics background kicking in. So I believe and I think we've seen what technology can do as of recently. So I think the trend needs to be embraced. I think that obviously, if if we look at kind of technological advancement, it needs to be a platform that is, legit, tested.
Yeah.
I'm not recommending that anyone go and assess language on ChatGPT. We've tried it before. It does not work. So learn from our mistakes. Do not do that. But I think it's actually very exciting. Hard for me to say what is of the field of neurolinguistics has been studied for a while, and I think it's kind of fascinating to observe what AI has done so far and will keep doing in the space of linguistics and language assessment as well. So I'm more in the let's wait and see. As of right now, AI is definitely a trend, but let's see how much of it is actually how much of it becomes tangible, and at what point it stops being a buzzword as well. So I'm excited
Amazing.
with a moderate dose of skepticism, which I think um so yeah.
So we have a few minutes left, just a couple of minutes left, but Naomi did put a question in the chat for us. Thanks for that. And she said, what advice would you give to companies just starting to integrate language assessment into the recruitment process to make the transition smoother and more effective?
Wow. Well, once again, engage. I mean, at the very least, I don't think that companies can pull off kind of doing their own language assessments for a long time, right? If you're a
Yeah.
startup, yes, it might work for you in the beginning. The moment you start gaining volume scale, you can't really afford to have your own employees do the assessments because, again, there's bias, they're not trained. It can work for a while, and it worked for us for a while, and then it started causing a lot of problems. So I would say, um, save yourself some time and some headache in terms of designing yourselves effective language assessments. Think about a good partnership with a good language provider, whatever works for you. Consider your scope of operations. From a procurement perspective, sometimes going globally with a provider can save you some money. So be open to collaboration and think of it from the supplier perspective. I think probably
Yeah.
that's the best advice I can give everyone is that, think
Top tip.
globally and think what needs can you cover and how you can then use that to negotiate a better rate with a certain vendor. But um, do not, I would say, be afraid of asking for help. And then a lot of, vendors and a lot of platforms, they will be able to provide additional services as well. So I think it's definitely a very good investment to invest in this because, again, you cannot teach a language in a few months.
No.
So kind of whatever you get the person in with, you can tip that scale slightly, but it's not going to make a dramatic difference. So this is actually, in my opinion, one of the smartest business investments you can make as an organization hiring multilingual professionals. And I can only recommend Pipplet for this. Our transition was
Uh,
practically non-existent. It was literally a few calls, we signed, the tool was live, minimal, and cannot I cannot emphasize enough how easy it was, and
yeah.
I'm very grateful for that.
I'm also very grateful to working with your team. I was the one, as you know, taking us through the process, through discovery, through the onboarding, and our custom client success team as well, also supporting with that. It was really a good team effort, but I was at the helm, and it was just a pleasure to work with you. So thank you so much. Well, we're at time. It went so fast, right?
It
I can't
did.
believe it. Yeah, it's been amazing. I was really looking forward to this, and you gave me so much from this time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us, and thank you for your generosity in sharing your knowledge and your experience with us all today. It's been fantastic, and I hope to have another conversation with you again in the future on this because I just love what you've got to share. To everybody that joined us and to all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a privilege to be able to host you. We hope that you've learned a lot from the session. A recording of it will be available in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, take care, have a great day, and bye for now. And I hope to speak to some of you soon about your language assessment needs. It would be great to have a conversation with you. If you do want to have a conversation with us about anything we discussed today, please feel free to reach out. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you from my
Anastasija.
side. Bye. Thanks, Mike.